My name is Daniel, I'm 35 years old, and I've been married to my wife, Claire, who is 33, for almost 10 years. We met in our mid-20s, got married young, and for a long time I thought I had hit the jackpot. Claire was fiery, opinionated, and knew how to take control of a room. She could be sharp with her words, but I always chalked it up to her strong personality. We built a life together, bought a house, settled into a routine, built friend groups around each other. No kids, something we always said we'd figure out later. To everyone on the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. The ones with the nice smiles and holiday photos, the couple people said had made it. But about a year ago, I started noticing cracks. Small at first, easy to dismiss. She became glued to her phone, always face down, always on silent. The Friday movie nights we used to love became, "Sorry, I'm too tired," nights. When I'd ask simple questions, "Who was that texting?" or "When will you be home?" I'd get snapped at. "God, Daniel, why are you so paranoid? Can't you let me breathe?" I convinced myself it was stress from her job. Claire works in marketing and was pushing for a big promotion. Late nights, tight deadlines, office politics, it made sense. I told myself she needed space, that if I just trusted her, things would go back to normal. But the signs kept piling up, and the voice in my gut got louder. Something wasn't right. And eventually, I found out just how right I was. The night I finally knew something was wrong started out ordinary. Claire told me she had a team dinner that might run late. No problem, I ordered Chinese, fed the dog, and figured I'd have a quiet night. By midnight, she still wasn't home. I called, straight to voicemail. Texted, no response. Around 1:30 a.m., she finally walked in. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, and she smelled faintly of cologne I didn't recognize. When I asked how the dinner was, she rolled her eyes and muttered, "Exhausting. Don't start with me, Daniel." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something in me just knew. The next morning, while she was showering, I picked up her phone. She had a new password, first time in years, but she'd been careless. I guessed it after a few tries. What I found made my stomach drop. A thread with someone saved as work. Except the messages weren't about deadlines or meetings. They were about hotel rooms, about last night being incredible, about next time let's not rush. And then the photos, her and him, in ways that left no room for denial. I nearly dropped the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. In that moment, every late night, every snapped reply, every excuse, it all clicked. My wife was cheating on me. And she wasn't even trying that hard to hide it. I didn't plan it. I didn't rehearse. When Claire came home that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table with her phone in front of me. The second she saw it, her face twisted like she'd just bitten into something sour. "Why the hell are you going through my phone, Daniel?" she snapped before I even said a word. No guilt, no fear, just pure rage at being caught. I told her I saw everything. The messages. The pictures. The hotel receipts she thought she'd hidden in her email. I laid it all out, my voice shaking but steady enough to strip away any chance of denial. Her first excuse? "You're overreacting. It's just harmless flirting. God, you act like I killed someone." When I didn't buy it, she rolled her eyes. "Fine. We kissed once. Big deal. Stop being so dramatic." When I pushed harder, she finally snapped, "Yes, okay, we slept together. Are you happy now? Is this the circus you wanted?" I just stared at her. The woman I thought I knew better than anyone, the woman I'd built a life with, was looking at me with pure contempt. Not a hint of regret. Not even an attempt to soften the blow. She almost looked smug, like she'd been waiting for this moment to unload the truth and twist the knife. That was the night I realized I wasn't just betrayed, I was living with someone who no longer cared whether I burned or not. The shock hit me first, like a punch to the chest. My ears were ringing, my hands trembling so badly I had to grip the edge of the table just to stay upright. I thought I'd be ready for this moment, that all the suspicions would cushion the blow. They didn't. Nothing could. Then came the anger, sharp, hot, uncontrollable. I yelled, louder than I ever have in my life. Do you even realize what you've done? You've destroyed everything we built. My voice cracked, the words bouncing off the kitchen walls. Claire's response? She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh my God, Daniel, stop being such a child. It was just sex. You act like I burned down the house. I slammed my fist on the counter so hard the dog ran upstairs. My chest was pounding, my throat raw, and still she stood there with her arms crossed, smirking like I was some pathetic clown. And then she twisted the knife. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have needed someone else. Those words gutted me. In that moment, I felt smaller than I ever had in my life. It wasn't just that she cheated, it was that she wanted me to believe it was my fault. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, replaying every word, every look, every sign I'd ignored. The anger burned through me until it left nothing but a hollow ache. When the rage finally burned itself out, all that was left was emptiness. I sat at the kitchen table the next morning staring at a cold cup of coffee, barely able to move. It was like my body had shut down. Claire came downstairs in her robe, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. She didn't look at me. She didn't say a word. She just poured herself a cup of coffee, sighed dramatically, and went back upstairs. That indifference cut deeper than the affair itself. The sadness came in waves. I remembered our wedding day, how she cried when she said her vows. The trip we took to Italy, where she begged me to promise we'd return for our 10-year anniversary. The way she used to curl up next to me on the couch. Were those memories real, or just part of a script she'd been acting out until she got bored? At work, I faked smiles and told people I was just tired. In reality, I wasn't eating, barely sleeping, and when I did, I woke up gasping from dreams of her and him together. I started doubting myself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was boring. Maybe I had failed her. The poison of her words seeped into me until I couldn't tell if the sadness I felt was for losing her, or for losing the version of myself who believed she loved me. I wasn't just broken. I was hollow. I thought the worst part was knowing she slept with him. But then the lies started unraveling, and every day brought a new hit. First, my buddy Chris called me. His wife works in the same office as Claire. He asked if I was okay. Apparently everyone at work already knew about her and this guy, Mark. They weren't subtle. Leaving together, touching each other at happy hours, even booking conferences that were really just weekends away. I was the only one in the dark. The humiliation stung worse than the betrayal itself. Then I remembered the Chicago client pitch trip from a few months back. Claire had made a big deal about packing her business outfits, even showed me her fake itinerary. One night, half drunk, she slipped up and mentioned a fancy seafood dinner. I checked. The restaurant was in our own city, not Chicago. Another lie. Another knife in the back. And the kicker? I found a crumpled hotel receipt in her purse. Same weekend she said she was at her mom's helping with spring cleaning. She didn't even try to hide it properly. Just shoved it between some gum wrappers and old receipts like it didn't matter. When I confronted her with all of this, she smirked and said, "You're obsessed. You're pathetic. If you were half the man Mark is, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere." It was like she enjoyed watching me crumble. The breaking point came on a Friday night. I had just finished a brutal week at work and all I wanted was a quiet evening. Claire came stumbling in close to midnight, reeking of alcohol and perfume that wasn't hers, her hair messy, lipstick smudged. She didn't even bother with an excuse this time. I asked her where she'd been. Calmly at first. She smirked and said, why do you care?" That smirk lit a fire in me. I laid everything out. The hotel receipts, the fake trips, the texts, the gossip from her coworkers. I told her I wasn't stupid, I wasn't paranoid, and I wasn't going to let her gaslight me anymore. She stared at me for a beat, then burst out laughing. Not a nervous laugh. A mocking, cruel laugh. "God, Daniel, you're so pathetic. You should be grateful someone like me even married you." I slammed my fist on the table so hard our dog yelped and bolted upstairs. My voice cracked as I shouted, "Do you even realize what you've done? You've destroyed us." Her answer? "You'll get over it. Men always do." That was it. That was the moment I knew there was nothing left to salvage. She didn't care. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even pretending anymore. She stormed upstairs, slammed the bedroom door, and left me standing alone in the kitchen with my heart pounding and my hands shaking. Before that night, some desperate part of me still thought maybe we could fix things. After that night, I knew it was over. After that fight, the house turned into a frozen wasteland. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was short, sharp, and venomous. Claire moved into the guest room, claiming she needed space. I didn't argue. I couldn't stand to look at her anyway. The silence between us was worse than the screaming. At least when we fought, there was some shred of energy, of passion, even if it was toxic. Now there was nothing. Just two strangers living under the same roof, passing each other like ghosts. She started staying out later and later, no excuses offered this time. Sometimes she wouldn't come home until morning. When I asked, she'd smirk and say, "Why do you care? You already know." The cruelty didn't stop either. She dropped comments like, "Don't wait up for me, Mark actually likes spending time with me." Or, "Maybe if you hit the gym once in a while, I wouldn't have had to find someone else." She delivered them casually, like she was commenting on the weather, but each one landed like a blade. I stopped fighting back. What was the point? It was like shouting into a hurricane. Instead, I shrank into myself. Work, home, feed the dog, sleep, repeat. The house was full of tension, but I felt emptier than ever. And the worst part? It started to feel like she was winning. Like she was getting satisfaction from watching me fall apart piece by piece. The final straw came when Claire told me she had to fly to Denver for a big client presentation. She went all out, showed me a fake itinerary, printed boarding passes, even made a big show of packing her suitcase with blazers and heels. She over-explained every detail, and that alone set off alarms in my head. The night she was supposedly in Denver, my phone buzzed. It was my buddy Chris again. He and his wife had gone out downtown, and guess who they saw? Claire. Not in Denver. Not at a hotel. She was sitting in a booth with Mark, laughing, leaning into him, feeding him fries like they were high school sweethearts. When she came home from her trip 2 days later, rolling her suitcase through the door, I played along. I asked her how Denver was. She went right into her rehearsed story, meetings, presentations, even a bit about the weather. I let her finish, then pulled out my phone and showed her the pictures Chris's wife had snapped. Clear as day, her and Mark together at that bar. For a split second her face went pale, but then she snapped right back into defense mode. Chris's wife hates me. Of course she tried to stir drama. When I pushed harder, she exploded, "So what if I lied? You've been suffocating me for years. Mark makes me feel alive." That was it. No more lies, no more masks. She admitted it like it was something to be proud of, like betraying me was her badge of honor. And in that moment, whatever thread of hope I had left snapped clean in two. After that blow-up, I hit the lowest point of my life. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was humiliation. Everyone knew. My friends, her coworkers, maybe even strangers who had seen them together in bars. I felt like the biggest fool alive. Nights became unbearable. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over, "Mark makes me feel alive." The sentence burned into my brain like a scar I couldn't scrape off. I stopped eating properly. Some days I lived on coffee and maybe a sandwich. I lost weight without even noticing. At work, I drifted through tasks, barely functioning. My boss pulled me aside one afternoon, concern written all over his face, and asked, "Daniel, are you okay?" I wanted to scream the truth, that my wife was tearing my life apart, but instead I muttered, "Yeah, just tired." I ignored texts from friends. Calls from family went unanswered. I couldn't face them. I couldn't face the pity in their voices or the shame I felt in mine. I isolated myself in that house, sinking deeper each day. The silence with Claire was complete now. We didn't fight. We didn't talk. She came and went as she pleased, sometimes not home for days, and I just sat there like a ghost in my own home. That was rock bottom. The place where sadness, anger, and numbness all collapsed into one crushing weight. And in that pit, I knew I either had to do something or I was going to drown in it. One night, after another sleepless stretch on the couch, I realized I couldn't keep living like this. I was wasting away while Claire paraded around with Mark like our marriage meant nothing. Something inside me finally snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I grabbed a notebook and made 2 columns, stay and leave. Under stay, I wrote, more lies, more humiliation, more nights alone, more of her contempt. Under leave, I wrote, pain, fear, uncertainty, but also freedom. A chance to breathe again. The choice became obvious the moment I saw it on paper. Staying meant death by 1,000 cuts. Leaving meant ripping the bandage off in one brutal motion, but at least it would stop the bleeding. The next morning, I told Claire I wanted a divorce. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She laughed. She actually laughed in my face and said, "Good luck. No one else is going to put up with you. Mark already promised he'll take care of me." Her words stung, but they also freed me. For the first time in months, I felt lighter. She thought she was crushing me, but all she really did was prove I was making the right decision. I was done. The morning after I told Claire I wanted a divorce, I called a lawyer. I felt embarrassed walking into his office, like admitting failure, but once I laid everything out, he didn't mince words. "Daniel, she's admitted to cheating, she's openly disrespecting you. File as soon as possible. Protect yourself." So I did. I started gathering everything: bank records, mortgage documents, car titles, insurance. Every part of our shared life became paperwork. It felt surreal, like I was dismantling the marriage brick by brick, turning memories into evidence. When the papers were finally served, Claire barely blinked. She smirked and said, "Finally growing a spine, huh? Don't think you're screwing me over. Mark already said he'll take care of me." She sounded almost proud, like this was the victory she'd been chasing all along. Packing my things was brutal. Every item carried a memory: the couch we bought together, the framed Italy photo, even the mugs from our first road trip. I boxed up what was mine and left the rest. I kept telling myself, they're just things. My peace matters more. The only battle I wasn't willing to lose was the dog. She didn't even fight me for him, probably because she knew he'd choose me anyway. He was my anchor, the only soul in that house that still showed me loyalty. The day I closed the door behind me, leaving the keys on the counter, I felt 2 things at once: heartbreak and relief. My marriage was dead, but I finally had the strength to walk away from the ashes. Moving into my own apartment felt surreal. It was small, barely half the size of the house, with bare walls and cheap furniture. But it was mine. No tension, no lies, no Claire. The first few nights were the hardest. I'd catch myself setting out 2 mugs for coffee before remembering there was only me now. The bed felt enormous and empty, and the silence pressed in. But it was a different kind of silence, clean, peaceful, not the suffocating kind I'd lived with for months. The dog adjusted quickly, curling up next to me at night as if he knew I needed him more than ever. He was my lifeline, a reminder that not everything in my life had been poisoned. Of course, the aftershocks came. Running into mutual friends who didn't know what to say, seeing pity in their eyes. Accidentally stumbling across Claire and Mark's smiling faces on social media, looking like the perfect couple. Waking up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, hearing her voice in my head, mocking me. But slowly, something shifted. The longer I was away from her, the clearer things became. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't pathetic. I had been loyal to someone who didn't deserve it, and now I finally had the space to see that truth. It still hurt. The grief was real. But for the first time in months, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could start to heal. As the weeks went by, I started to see everything with a kind of painful clarity. Claire's affair wasn't a sudden betrayal. It was the final act in a play she'd been rehearsing for years. The contempt, the constant criticism, the dismissive way she spoke to me. I used to call it her sass or strong personality. But it wasn't. It was disrespect. The cheating just ripped off the mask. She never really valued me, not the way I valued her. To her, I was stable, predictable, safe. And when that wasn't exciting anymore, she chased someone else and blamed me for her choice. I began writing down the things I learned so I wouldn't forget them. trust your gut. I knew something was wrong for months. I let her convince me I was paranoid. I should have listened to myself sooner. Respect matters more than love. Love can fade, but once respect is gone, the relationship is already dead. Betrayal isn't your fault. Her cheating wasn't because I wasn't enough. It was because she wasn't honest, loyal, or capable of commitment. Most of all, I realized something I wish I'd learned years earlier. Being alone is 1,000 times better than being with someone who makes you feel worthless. After the dust settled, I decided I couldn't just sit in that apartment letting the pain define me. I needed to take my life back. The first step was small, going to the gym. At first it felt forced, like I was dragging myself through mud. But day by day I started to feel stronger, not just physically, but mentally. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned years ago. I dusted off my guitar, something Claire used to call a waste of time, and played until my fingers ached. I started cooking real meals instead of living on takeout. I even joined a hiking group, spending weekends outdoors instead of trapped inside my thoughts. Therapy helped too. At first, I was embarrassed to go, like admitting I needed help made me weak. But it turned out to be the opposite. It gave me tools to make sense of the chaos. My therapist told me, healing doesn't mean going back to who you were. It means becoming who you're supposed to be. That line stuck with me. Little by little, I stopped seeing myself as the guy Claire betrayed and started seeing myself as the guy who survived her betrayal. She tried to break me, but here I was, still standing, still breathing, still moving forward. It wasn't about revenge or proving her wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could live again, that I was worth more than her lies. When the divorce was finalized, I expected to feel crushed all over again. Instead, I felt relief. The papers were just papers, but signing them was like cutting the last rope tying me to a sinking ship. I started reshaping my life from scratch. My apartment became my canvas. No more gray walls or minimalist furniture Claire insisted on. I painted, hung up posters, bought a big recliner I actually liked. For the first time in years, my space reflected me. Not us, not her, just me. I reconnected with people I had lost touch with. Friends invited me out for drinks, and I went. We laughed, we joked, and for a few hours, I didn't think about Claire at all. Ryan, one of my oldest friends, admitted he'd seen this coming but didn't know how to tell me. Instead of being angry, I was grateful. It reminded me that real friends stick, even when you're too broken to see it. I also started traveling. Nothing big. Weekend trips to the coast, hiking trails, little towns I'd always meant to visit. Each trip felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd forgotten. The strangest part? I started enjoying the quiet. The silence in that house with Claire had been suffocating, filled with tension. The silence in my apartment was peaceful. It was the sound of freedom. No lies, no contempt, no betrayal. Just me, breathing easy. Even though I cut Claire out of my life, the world had a way of throwing updates at me whether I wanted them or not. A few months after the divorce, a mutual friend casually mentioned seeing her and Mark together. They looked happy, he said, then quickly added, "Sorry man, I shouldn't have said that." At first, those updates were like a knife. I pictured them laughing over dinner, planning trips, living the life she once promised me. I'd feel the anger rise in my chest, followed by that hollow sadness that I wasn't enough. Then came the gossip. Someone told me Mark had still been married when the affair started. His wife found out, and apparently it turned into a nightmare. Lawyers, custody battles, the whole mess. Suddenly Claire wasn't just the other woman. She was the woman who helped blow up another family. And slowly, the updates turned sour. I heard they argued in public, that Claire complained about how much Mark worked, that she was already spending time with another guy on the side. The old me would have obsessed over that. But this time I just felt relief. Whatever chaos Claire carried, she carried it away from me. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't angry. I was free. With Claire out of my life for good, I finally had the space to figure out who I really was without her voice tearing me down. For years, I bent myself into whatever shape I thought would keep the peace, whatever would stop the criticism. Now, I didn't have to anymore. I started picking up the pieces of myself I had abandoned. I played my guitar again, late into the night, without anyone rolling their eyes and calling it noise. I cooked meals the way I wanted, experimenting with recipes Claire would have mocked. I joined a hiking group and spent weekends exploring trails, breathing fresh air instead of stewing in old bitterness. Bit by bit, my confidence came back. I looked in the mirror and didn't just see the man she broke. I saw someone who survived it. Someone who had the courage to walk away from a toxic marriage and build something new. Therapy reinforced it. My therapist told me, healing isn't about getting back to the old you, it's about becoming the person you were always meant to be. That line stuck. I wasn't trying to rewind my life to before Claire cheated. I was building a new version of myself, one who knew his worth. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. And every small win, every new meal, every new trail, every laugh with friends, felt like a victory. Acceptance didn't come as some dramatic moment. It crept in slowly, quietly, until one day I realized it was there. I noticed I hadn't thought about Claire in days. I hadn't checked her social media, hadn't replayed our fights in my head. The grip she had on me was finally loosening. The memories were still there, but they stopped hurting as much. They became like scars, ugly reminders of what I'd been through, but no longer bleeding. I stopped asking myself why. Why she cheated. Why she treated me with such contempt. Why I stayed as long as I did. The truth is, no answer would ever make it make sense. She cheated because that's who she is, not because of who I am. One evening, I sat on my balcony with a beer, my dog curled up at my feet, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time, peace. Not excitement, not joy. Just peace. And it was enough. That was the moment I knew I had let go. The past was behind me, and it didn't own me anymore. Looking back now, I see the whole mess for what it was. A brutal lesson I never wanted but desperately needed. Claire's betrayal nearly broke me, but it also forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up. If you're reading this and suspect your partner is cheating, listen to your gut. I ignored mine for months, letting her gaslight me into thinking I was paranoid. I wish I hadn't. If you're in a relationship where contempt has replaced respect, don't fool yourself into thinking love alone will save it. Once your partner starts looking at you with disgust, it's over, whether you admit it or not. And most importantly, don't be afraid to leave. The pain of walking away is sharp, but it's nothing compared to the slow death of staying with someone who destroys you piece by piece. I came out the other side of this with scars, yes, but also with freedom. I don't know exactly what my future holds, but I do know this: I'll never let anyone make me feel worthless again. If my story does anything, I hope it shows someone out there that you can survive betrayal. You can heal. You can rebuild. And one day, you'll look back and realize the worst thing that happened to you was also the beginning of something better.